Ferrari's top brass are done being polite. Lewis Hamilton's first season in red was so bad, it's shaking the entire foundation of the team. Outpaced by Leclerc, no wins, no podiums, and now whispers from inside Maranello say, we may have made a mistake bringing him in. Could this be the beginning of the end for Hamilton at Ferrari? And what secret clauses might allow the team to cut ties early? If you're serious about F1, team politics, and what's really going on behind the scenes, hit subscribe now before this story explodes in 2026. Lewis Hamilton's arrival at Ferrari was supposed to be the start of a legendary final chapter. The headlines wrote themselves, a 7-time world champion joining the most iconic team in Formula One history in search of one last title. But what was supposed to be a cinematic comeback has turned into a slow-moving disaster. Ferrari's leadership is no longer just concerned, they're frustrated, and behind closed doors, the mood has shifted from optimism to disillusionment. According to internal sources at Maranello, several key decision-makers feel blindsided by the lack of impact Hamilton has had both on and off the track. They expected his presence to transform not just the performance level, but also the mindset of the racing division: more precision, more maturity, and more results. Instead, what they've witnessed is a driver struggling to adapt, offering vague feedback, and losing out to Charles Leclerc in almost every department. What makes this worse for the Ferrari board is that the team had options. Letting go of Carlos Sainz, who had just delivered some of his most consistent performances, was a gamble. The leadership backed Fred Vasseur's vision that centered around Hamilton's experience, brand power, and technical feedback. But now, that decision is under intense internal review. The board feels it made a high-risk investment that, so far, has shown no return. The frustration isn't just about race results, it's also about communication. Insiders say Hamilton's integration into the team hasn't gone as smoothly as expected. He still operates in the Mercedes style: quiet, data-driven, and team-guarded. But Ferrari thrives on emotional leadership and loud, visible accountability. This mismatch in working culture is creating friction. Engineers are reportedly finding it harder to build chemistry with him compared to the familiar, fluent dynamics they had with Leclerc and Sainz. Then there's the issue of media perception. Ferrari is a team deeply aware of its image in Italy and globally. Hamilton's disappointing performance with no podiums and multiple Q2 exits has opened the door to criticism from Italian media outlets who rarely pull punches. The leadership is feeling the heat. They brought Hamilton in to elevate Ferrari's prestige and attract sponsors. Instead, they're managing damage control week after week. In private conversations, the word mistake has started to surface not as a formal accusation, but as a creeping doubt. Some executives now believe the team underestimated just how difficult it would be for Hamilton to adapt to a completely different car philosophy and engineering structure after over a decade at Mercedes. And with the 2026 regulation changes looming, those concerns are growing louder by the week. Ferrari's leadership is not yet ready to make dramatic changes. Hamilton's contract runs through 2026, and publicly, they're still backing him. But the internal pressure is real. If results don't improve, and quickly, the board could begin to explore exit strategies, early release clauses, or even reshaping the team's technical focus around Leclerc. In short, Hamilton's place at Ferrari is no longer sacred. It's on a stopwatch, and the countdown has already begun. Ferrari's 2026 development program was designed with Lewis Hamilton in mind. From simulator inputs to early chassis concepts, the idea was simple: leverage his experience to influence the next-gen car regulations. But as Hamilton's first season spiraled into underperformance, that plan is being re-evaluated. Inside the technical department, confidence in his feedback has waned, and there's a growing shift towards centering the 2026 project around Charles Leclerc instead. The heart of the problem lies in correlation. Engineers at Maranello have noticed that Hamilton's driving style and feedback, especially on traction zones and rear-end stability, often clashes with what their data shows and what Leclerc is confirming on track. In meetings, Hamilton frequently asks for setup changes that go against Ferrari's design fundamentals. This has created friction. Development time is being split between two divergent driving philosophies, which could dilute Ferrari's progress when the field resets in 2026. With active aerodynamics and a rebalanced power unit formula coming into play, 2026 will reward teams that have a united technical direction. Ferrari knows this. Their concern is that Hamilton, intentionally or not, may be leading them down a development path that doesn't match where the regulations are heading. Meanwhile, Leclerc's requests, which align more naturally with Ferrari's design instincts, are now being prioritized in wind tunnel testing and correlation sessions. This has triggered a subtle but undeniable power shift within the team. While Hamilton arrived as the headline name, it's Leclerc who now leads the garage on race weekends, commands greater technical trust, and drives more of the 2026 simulation runs. That is not just a reflection of performance, it's a sign of Ferrari choosing continuity and familiarity over legacy status. The engineers know that when pressure hits, they need a driver who is fully integrated into the Ferrari ecosystem. Team principal Fred Vasseur is stuck in the middle. He personally pushed for Hamilton's signing, betting that his leadership and long-term development skills would elevate the project. Now he faces a political storm: back the legacy of a global icon, or pivot toward the driver who's been with Ferrari through thick and thin. Vasseur's credibility with the Ferrari board may hinge on how he navigates this internal tug-of-war in the months ahead. Ferrari's leadership also fears that if the 2026 car is developed too closely around Hamilton's style, and he fails to adapt to it under pressure, the team will have lost a year of progress in a critical regulation cycle. With teams like Red Bull and McLaren already testing radical concepts for the new active aero rules, Ferrari can't afford indecision. That's why they've started investing more time in aligning Leclerc with the technical group, while reducing Hamilton's influence softly but unmistakably. The long-term consequence is clear. If Hamilton doesn't turn his form around in the early half of the 2026 season, Ferrari may begin preparing for a future without him even before the contract ends. The team can't risk another development cycle derailed by divided feedback and conflicting philosophies. In Formula One, the fastest teams are the most united. And right now, Ferrari is choosing clarity over compromise. Lewis Hamilton didn't join Ferrari just to race. He came to rewrite history. The dream was to end his career not only as the most decorated driver of all time, but as the one who restored Ferrari to championship glory. That vision now feels increasingly distant. With no podiums, internal tension, and limited technical influence, his time at Ferrari risks becoming an unfortunate postscript rather than a triumphant final act. Every race weekend adds pressure. In the paddock, whispers have turned into open questions. Has Hamilton stayed one season too long? Unlike his dominant years at Mercedes, where every poor result could be blamed on tire strategy or team errors, the spotlight now falls squarely on him. Ferrari insiders no longer protect him with political cover. This is Formula One at its most ruthless, and Hamilton, despite his legacy, is no longer immune to scrutiny. The challenge for Hamilton is not just on track, it's in the garage, the factory, and the press room. His reputation as a development driver, once undisputed, is now being questioned. Engineers note that his feedback often revolves around comfort and feel, rather than actionable data that translates into measurable lap time. Compared to the raw, numbers-driven inputs from younger drivers like Leclerc, Piastri, or Russell, Hamilton's approach feels increasingly dated. And while the global fanbase still reveres him, Hamilton's standing inside the paddock is shifting. Sponsors have noticed the change. So have team principals. No one doubts his marketability. He's still the most recognizable face in the sport, but in a results-driven world, the talk is starting to tilt from what can Hamilton win to what does Hamilton still want from F1. If the answers aren't clear by mid-2026, the exit door may open, and not on his terms. Ferrari, meanwhile, must plan for every outcome. If Hamilton rebounds, they'll have a championship-caliber driver leading their new era project. But if he continues to struggle, the team risks wasting critical development momentum. That's why discussions have already begun behind closed doors about long-term driver strategy. While no official moves have been made, the Scuderia is actively monitoring younger talents, both inside their academy and externally, in case a transition is needed. Hamilton himself faces a crossroads. He can't rely on past success to carry him forward in a team like Ferrari, not when results are everything. If 2026 begins poorly, and the gap to Leclerc widens, his influence will fade fast. At that point, retirement becomes not just a possibility, but perhaps the most dignified way out. After all, Hamilton has always spoken about leaving the sport on his own terms. The challenge now is ensuring that moment isn't dictated by Ferrari's frustration. There is still time to change the story. Hamilton is a 7-time world champion for a reason. He's come back from defeats, controversies, and performance dips before. But this comeback might be the hardest of all because it's not just about speed anymore. It's about trust, culture, politics, and legacy. If he can rise again in red, it will be one of the greatest stories Formula One has ever seen. If not, it could be the quiet end to a thunderous career.